Today we'll walk through the electrolyte dashboard, which is designed as a rapid visual reference for recognizing electrolyte imbalances and understanding how they present clinically. The goal is not just memorization of lab values, but developing pattern recognition skills that help us quickly connect abnormal electrolytes to neurologic, muscular, cardiac, and acid-base changes in real patients. Throughout this presentation, focus on how these electrolytes interact with one another and how subtle changes can become life-threatening if not recognized early. These are the normal reference ranges for the major electrolytes we monitor most frequently in clinical practice. Sodium primarily regulates fluid balance and neurologic stability. Potassium is critical for cardiac conduction and muscle function. Calcium supports contraction, clotting, and neuromuscular stability. Magnesium acts as a neuromuscular sedative and rhythm stabilizer. Phosphorus supports ATP production and cellular energy. Chloride helps maintain acid-base balance. One key concept to remember is that low calcium, magnesium, and potassium tend to create hyperexcitability, things like twitching, tetany, and seizures. Elevated levels often produce the opposite effect: weakness, lethargy, diminished reflexes, and slowed conduction. Most importantly, abnormalities in potassium, calcium, and magnesium can rapidly become cardiac emergencies due to their effect on conduction and arrhythmia risk. Focus often on how these electrolytes interact with one another and how subtle changes can become life-threatening if not recognized early. Rather than memorizing electrolytes individually, this slide organizes them into functional domains. Domain 1 focuses on fluid and pH regulation. Sodium acts as the osmotic driver, while chloride follows acid-base balance. Domain 2 is the excitable triad: potassium, calcium, and magnesium. These directly influence muscle contraction, nerve conduction, and cardiac rhythm. Domain 3 is the energy and bone anchor, represented mainly by phosphorus. Phosphorus is essential for ATP production, oxygen delivery, and skeletal integrity. Grouping electrolytes this way helps simplify clinical reasoning. When you see weakness, tetany, altered mental status, or arrhythmias, you can immediately narrow your differential based on which functional domain is disrupted. Sodium abnormalities primarily affect brain function because sodium controls water movement. Hyponatremia usually occurs from excess water or sodium loss. Water shifts into brain cells, causing cerebral edema. Patients may present with headache, confusion, seizures, or coma. Severe symptomatic cases may require hypertonic saline. Hypernatremia is usually caused by water loss exceeding sodium loss. The brain cells shrink as water leaves the intracellular space. Patients often present with intense thirst, lethargy, restlessness, or altered mental status. One of the most important safety principles with sodium correction is to correct slowly. Rapid correction in either direction can cause devastating neurologic injury, including osmotic demyelination or cerebral edema. Chloride often gets overlooked, but it closely mirrors acid-base balance. Hypochloremia is commonly associated with metabolic alkalosis. Causes include vomiting, diuretics, or gastric losses. These patients may develop symptoms similar to hypokalemia, including weakness, cramps, and tetany. Hyperchloremia is usually linked to metabolic acidosis. Common causes include large volume normal saline infusions or bicarbonate loss from diarrhea. Patients may develop tachypnea, weakness, and fatigue. An important nursing consideration is fluid selection. Excessive normal saline can worsen hyperchloremic acidosis, while balanced fluids like lactated ringers may better support acid-base stability. Potassium is one of the most clinically dangerous electrolytes because of its direct effect on cardiac conduction. Hypokalemia causes muscle weakness, ileus, cramps, and cardiac irritability. On ECG, we often see flattened T waves and prominent U waves. Hyperkalemia can rapidly progress to lethal arrhythmias. ECG findings include peaked T waves, widened QRS complexes, and eventually, loss of P waves. The emergency management priorities for hyperkalemia occur in 3 steps. First, stabilize the cardiac membrane with IV calcium. Second, shift potassium back into the cell using insulin with dextrose, bicarbonate, or albuterol. Third, remove potassium from the body through diuretics, potassium binders, or dialysis. This is a high-alert electrolyte, and requires immediate recognition and intervention. Calcium abnormalities strongly influence neuromuscular excitability. Hypocalcemia makes nerves and muscles hyperexcitable. Patients may develop tetany, laryngospasm, seizures, or prolonged QT intervals. Vosteck's and Trousseau's signs are classic findings. Hypercalcemia produces the opposite effect: weakness, lethargy, and depressed neuromuscular activity. Patients may also develop shortened QT intervals and cardiac instability. Clinically, hypocalcemia is often associated with hypoparathyroidism, or massive blood transfusion due to citrate binding. Hypercalcemia is commonly related to malignancy, or hyperparathyroidism. Remember that calcium is not just a bone electrolyte. It is also critical for cardiac contraction and neurologic stability. Magnesium is frequently underestimated, but it acts as a stabilizer for both the neuromuscular system and cardiac conduction. Hypomagnesemia causes hyperexcitability. Patients may develop tremors, seizures, psychosis, positive Chvostek or Trousseau signs, and dangerous arrhythmias like torsade de pointes. Hypermagnesemia causes generalized depression of the nervous system. Patients may present with loss of reflexes, respiratory depression, hypotension, and even coma. One of the most important clinical pearls is that magnesium deficiency makes potassium and calcium abnormalities difficult to correct. If hypokalemia or hypocalcemia is not responding to treatment, always consider magnesium depletion. Phosphorus is essential for ATP production and oxygen delivery. Hypophosphatemia creates what we can think of as a dead battery state. Patients may experience profound weakness, respiratory failure, rhabdomyolysis, or inability to wean from mechanical ventilation. A major nursing alert is refeeding syndrome. Malnourished patients who suddenly receive nutrition can rapidly shift phosphorus into cells, leading to critical depletion. Hyperphosphatemia is most commonly seen in renal failure. Excess phosphorus binds calcium, contributing to hypocalcemia and soft tissue calcification. Phosphorus abnormalities can appear subtle at first, but often have major physiologic consequences. This slide emphasizes that electrolyte disorders rarely occur in isolation. On one side of the spectrum are the downers: hypermagnesemia, severe hypokalemia, and other conditions causing weakness, diminished reflexes, and lethargy. On the other side are the uppers: hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, and hyperkalemia, which produce tetany, tremors, hyperreflexia, and seizures. When assessing patients, it is important to recognize these patterns rather than focusing only on isolated lab values. Muscle weakness, bowel dysfunction, reflex changes, or respiratory compromise should prompt a broader electrolyte evaluation. This slide highlights how electrolytes shape cardiac conduction. Potassium primarily affects the T wave and overall depolarization and repolarization. Calcium mainly changes the QT interval. Low calcium prolongs the QT interval, while high calcium shortens it. Magnesium stabilizes rhythm. Low magnesium increases the risk for torsade de pointes and ventricular arrhythmias. Recognizing these ECG patterns allows early intervention before patients deteriorate into unstable dysrhythmias or cardiac arrest. Electrolytes are deeply interconnected. The first relationship shown here is the calcium-phosphorus seesaw. As phosphorus rises, calcium tends to fall due to hormonal regulation and chemical binding. The second concept is magnesium as the gatekeeper. Without adequate magnesium, the sodium-potassium pump does not function properly. Clinically, this means that refractory hypokalemia or hypocalcemia often will not improve until magnesium is corrected first. This is why treating the number alone is not enough. We must identify the underlying physiologic relationship driving the imbalance. This slide focuses on high-risk IV safety principles. Potassium should never be given IV push because it can immediately trigger fatal arrhythmias. It must always be diluted and administered via infusion pump. Calcium chloride is highly irritating to tissue and requires careful IV site monitoring to prevent extravasation injury. IV phosphorus replacement also requires caution because rapid administration can abruptly lower calcium levels and trigger tetany or arrhythmias. These medications are considered high-alert therapies, and nursing vigilance is essential to prevent catastrophic complications. Now that we've discussed how electrolyte imbalances affect the body, This slide focuses on how we actually support correction and stabilization. On the left side are dietary sources, what I call the pantry. These are natural food sources that can help replenish electrolytes. For potassium, foods like bananas, oranges, potatoes, spinach, and tomatoes are rich sources and may help patients with mild hypokalemia or ongoing potassium losses. For calcium, dairy products, green leafy vegetables, and canned salmon or sardines provide significant calcium intake to support neuromuscular and bone function. Magnesium-rich foods include green vegetables, nuts, and legumes. Magnesium is especially important because low magnesium can make both potassium and calcium difficult to correct. Phosphorus is found in foods like hard cheeses, nuts, whole grains, and meats. However, in patients with renal failure, phosphorus often needs to be restricted because the kidneys cannot clear it effectively. On the right side are pharmacologic tools, medications we commonly use to actively manage electrolyte disturbances. Kxalate and Patiromer are potassium binders used in hyperkalemia. They work by binding potassium in the GI tract so it can be excreted. Calcitonin is used in hypercalcemia. It lowers calcium levels by decreasing bone resorption and shifting calcium back into bone. Calcium acetate and sevelamer are phosphate binders commonly used in chronic kidney disease to lower phosphorus absorption from the gut. Desmopressin, or DDAVP, is a synthetic form of antidiuretic hormone used in diabetes insipidus to reduce excessive water loss and help correct hypernatremia. The major takeaway from this slide is that electrolyte management often combines nutrition, medication therapy, and correction of the underlying disease process. Let's wrap up with a rapid clinical reference that brings all of the major electrolyte concepts together in one place. The goal is not to memorize every number on the screen, but to recognize the patterns associated with each electrolyte imbalance and understand how they present clinically. Starting with sodium, our primary extracellular electrolyte. Low sodium, or hyponatremia, causes water to shift into brain cells, leading to cerebral edema, confusion, and potentially seizures. High sodium causes cellular dehydration, so patients often present with intense thirst, neurologic changes, and signs of dehydration. Serum osmolality helps us better understand what is driving the sodium imbalance. Next is chloride, which closely follows acid-base balance. Low chloride is commonly associated with metabolic alkalosis, often from vomiting or diuretic use. High chloride is linked to metabolic acidosis, which may occur with diarrhea or large-volume normal saline administration. Urine chloride can help identify whether the kidneys are appropriately compensating. Potassium is one of the most important cardiac electrolytes. Low potassium causes weakness, ileus, and cardiac irritability. High potassium is extremely dangerous because it can lead to muscle cramps, conduction abnormalities, and cardiac arrest. On ECG, hypokalemia produces flattened T waves, while hyperkalemia produces peaked T waves. Calcium abnormalities primarily affect neuromuscular excitability. Low calcium causes tetany and positive Chvostek's signs because nerves become hyperexcitable. High calcium produces weakness and lethargy due to depressed neuromuscular activity. On ECG, hypocalcemia prolongs the QT interval, while hypercalcemia shortens it. Magnesium acts as a neurologic and cardiac stabilizer. Low magnesium creates hyperreflexia, tremors, and arrhythmia risk. High magnesium causes depressed reflexes, lethargy, and potentially respiratory depression. One major concern with magnesium imbalance is torsades de pointe. Finally, phosphorus is critical for cellular energy and muscle function. Low phosphorus can cause profound weakness and respiratory muscle failure. High phosphorus often occurs in renal failure and can contribute to tetany and tissue calcification because phosphorus and calcium have an inverse relationship. The key takeaway from this entire matrix is the statement at the bottom of the slide. Assess the patient, not just the monitor. Always connect the lab value with the patient's symptoms, ECG findings, hemodynamic stability, and overall clinical presentation. In closing, electrolyte imbalances are some of the most common yet potentially life-threatening conditions we encounter in healthcare. Early recognition of clinical patterns, understanding how electrolytes affect the neurologic and cardiac systems, and identifying the underlying cause are critical to preventing patient deterioration. The most important takeaway is to treat the patient, not just the lab value. When we connect assessment findings, ECG changes, and laboratory data together, we can intervene earlier, manage electrolyte disorders more safely, and improve patient outcomes.